Stop it! What are you doing? On the way to visit my husband's grave, my brother-in-law suddenly hugged me.
Shoo. Be quiet. Look at the man and woman in the shade of the trees.
As I tried to shake off his hand, he moved to hide me and pointed in a certain direction. What? No way. There, I saw my husband, who was supposed to be dead, embracing a woman. The shock made my mind go blank. But then, I suddenly realized my huge misunderstanding. I had been completely deceived by them. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And so, my story of revenge began. Life is like a drama. Even so, my experience might be a little special. The man I married was a classmate from junior high school, and 4 years had passed since our wedding. While working hard as a nurse, I spent my days with him, who, though plain in appearance, was always bright and cooperative. Our adorable daughter, who was born to us, had just turned 3 and was growing up healthy and full of energy. A close friend from long ago lived in the next town, and I often turned to her for advice. We lived with my husband's family, but they didn't interfere with us, and they were all very kind. The only things that concerned me were that my brother-in-law, who was supposed to be an elite, always seemed a little cold, and that my husband's salary at his company had been decreasing. At the time, I was convinced that my married life was going smoothly. All I could do was listen to my husband's complaints about his company.
My company is small compared to my brother's, and business has been bad lately. On top of that, my boss doesn't recognize my abilities and is preventing my promotion.
That must be tough.
My salary is going down, and my bonus has been cut in half. I'm losing my motivation to work.
I see. Although he didn't show me his paychecks, I noticed that the $1,000 he used to give me for living expenses had been reduced to $500. Things were indeed getting tight, but I was also working, and we didn't have to pay rent because we lived in the house inherited from his grandfather.
I'm considering changing jobs, but it's not going well. I'll keep trying for the family's sake, so bear with it for a while.
Of course, we'll get through this together. I didn't think too seriously about his job at the time, but I would later regret that. Another thing that bothered me was my brother-in-law, who had avoided eye contact with me ever since we first met. Whenever I felt his gaze and turned around, he would deliberately look away, making me wonder if there was something he didn't like about me. One time, when I noticed him staring at my daughter, I felt uneasy. What's wrong?
Oh, it's nothing.
He averted his eyes, but I had an uncomfortable, lingering feeling, so I decided to talk to my husband about it.
My brother has always been smart and proud. A lot of women come on to him, but he's never shown any interest in them. He's a bit of an oddball.
I see. But why does he avoid me?
He probably doesn't like that his less capable younger brother has a pretty wife and a cute kid. We've never gotten along, so don't worry about it.
His explanation didn't fully satisfy me, so I invited my friend to lunch and asked for her opinion.
You know, I've always thought you were living the high life.
What? What do you mean?
A kind husband, a good relationship with his parents. I'm jealous. Complaining about your brother-in-law being a bit cold seems ridiculous.
It was rare for her to speak to me so harshly, which felt off. What's wrong? Are you worried about something?
No, let's not talk about me right now. You need to focus on supporting your husband, okay?
She quickly shifted the conversation away from herself, not revealing anything at the time. Someday, when she opened up to me, I'd be there for her as much as I could. I felt grateful to have such a caring friend who was always putting me first. Not long after that, something happened that made all my previous worries seem insignificant. That day, I was off work and busy catching up on household chores. Meanwhile, my husband, who should have already left for work, lingered at home. I noticed he didn't look well. You should go soon, or you'll be late for work.
I know, but I don't want to leave Ashley.
He hugged our daughter tightly. It was unusual for him to act that way, which made me feel uneasy. Are you sure you're okay? You don't look well.
Yeah, I might have a cold. I'll be going now.
He smiled faintly and left the house. If only I had listened to him more carefully then, maybe things wouldn't have turned out the way they did. Around noon, I received a call from his workplace, telling me he hadn't shown up. I immediately tried calling his phone, but he didn't answer. The uneasy feeling from that morning grew, and I rushed into his study, where I found something shocking on his desk.
I can't go on anymore. Nothing is going right. I'm sorry, Anna, Ashley. I'll make up for it with my life. Thank you for everything.
It was a suicide note. I stood frozen, clutching that letter. I contacted my in-laws, friends, and his acquaintances, but no one could find him. Fearing the worst, I reported him missing to the police, but there was no trace of him. From that day on, I spent sleepless nights filled with worry. My friend, while offering some comfort, also spoke harshly to me.
I told you to support him more. You just left him to deal with everything alone, didn't you?
I knew she didn't mean any harm, but her words cut deep. Maybe it's my fault. He was struggling with his job, and I didn't tell him it was okay to quit. I should have been more supportive. I blamed myself, and combined with my lack of sleep, I found it hard to focus at work. Even my daughter, who had just turned 3, began crying more often, likely sensing my anxiety. Then, my brother-in-law started visiting us daily.
Anna, you don't look well. You haven't been sleeping, have you?
He tried to put a hand on my shoulder, but I instinctively brushed it away.
You were so energetic in middle school, swinging that racket around, but now you've become so thin because of my brother.
What? How do you know what club I was in? I had attended a large middle school with over 1,000 students. We had never spoken, and we weren't even in the same grade. The fact that he knew I had been in the badminton club gave me an eerie feeling. Seeing him hesitate to answer, I felt more unsettled. From then on, I began avoiding him, using poor health as an excuse. Instead, my father and mother-in-law started visiting, helping take care of my daughter and assisting with household chores. Although I wished they'd leave me alone, I couldn't bring myself to say it, knowing they were only worried about me. 3 months later, the police contacted me, saying they had found my husband's body in the forest. Due to the summer heat and animals, his body was in a terrible condition, almost unrecognizable. But his clothes and belongings matched, and his identification and wallet confirmed it was him. Even his father confirmed from the body's build that it was indeed my husband. I was so devastated that I barely remember what happened afterward. My father-in-law and brother-in-law took charge of the funeral arrangements. About a week after the funeral, I finally began to regain a little of my composure. I need to stay strong for Ashley. But as I thought about my daughter, I still couldn't shake the uneasy feeling about my brother-in-law's behavior. He seemed overly curious about the life insurance payout and whether my husband had any savings, as if he were probing for information about the money. In reality, my husband had canceled his life insurance shortly before he died, so there was very little money left. His family had kindly covered the funeral and burial expenses. About 6 months after my husband's death, we planned to visit his grave with his family. However, on the day of the visit, my mother-in-law caught a cold, and my father-in-law stayed behind to take care of her. I was going to go alone after leaving Ashley with relatives, but my brother-in-law insisted on coming with me. Although the idea of being alone with him made me uncomfortable, I couldn't find a reason to refuse, so I reluctantly agreed. The grave was halfway up a mountain, and it took about 30 minutes to walk there. As we neared the grave, I felt my brother-in-law's gaze lingering on me. Just as I was about to say something, he suddenly grabbed my arm.
Shoo. Be quiet. Look over there.
He pointed towards the trees, where a man and woman stood embracing. What? No way! When I looked closely, I realized it was my husband, who was supposed to be dead. What I saw there left me speechless. Standing in front of me was a man who looked just like my husband, along with a woman. I was in shock, unable to believe my eyes.
There's something I need to tell you, Anna.
I had barely caught my breath when he dropped another bombshell. But why were they there in the first place? We decided to stay hidden and listen to their conversation.
Your grave is quite impressive.
Isn't it? I doubt Dad or Mom had that much money, so maybe my brother paid for it. And they don't even know it's some stranger's bones in there. Hilarious.
And soon enough, we'll have that $300,000 life insurance. Our plan was a huge success.
At that moment, I felt a surge of anger burning inside me. I will never forgive them. They kept chatting away, completely unaware that we were eavesdropping, excited about how perfectly their plan had worked. Between their conversation and what my brother-in-law told me, everything started to make sense. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I began to plot my revenge. A week later, I visited Veronica's apartment.
Huh? Anna? What are you doing here without any notice?
Her eyes widened in shock when she saw me at the door. My gaze fell to a familiar pair of men's shoes near her feet. Realizing what I noticed, she panicked.
Sorry, he's here right now.
Oh. You've got someone here? I'd love to meet him.
Wait. I can't introduce you yet. Well, there's some circumstances. Anna, I'm really sorry, but could you leave for now?
It seemed her constant anxiety was all about him. But I wasn't about to let that stop me. I don't need to meet your boyfriend, Veronica. I just need to talk to you. I've come into a large sum of money, and I can't figure out how to use it.
What? What do you mean?
Intrigued, Veronica hurriedly pushed him into a back room, shut the door, and invited me into the dining room. Well, Zach's dad won the lottery, $7 million. Her eyes bulged with shock, and I could hear a low, incredulous what coming from the other side of the door. Clearly, he was listening in. So, his father wants to split it between Zach's brother, me, and Ashley. I'm thinking about using the money to buy property, but I wanted your advice.
You're telling me they're splitting $7 million between just 3 people?
At that exact moment, the door to the back room swung open with a bang.
This is a joke, right? I have a right to that money too.
Emerging from the room with clenched fists and a face flushed with anger was none other than Zach. Oh my, you're alive? What are you doing here?
Well.
I questioned him coldly, and he began mumbling excuses.
I was struggling with work and went to the forest, planning to end it all. But I couldn't go through with it.
Apparently, while he was contemplating his fate, he stumbled upon a dead man who looked similar to him and decided to switch their identities by placing his own ID on the body. He intended to disappear, but fate had him cross paths with Veronica, who helped him. Zach rattled off a series of lies designed to make himself look like the victim, but I wasn't fooled. The part about faking his death was true, but the rest was a transparent attempt to protect himself. I know everything.
What? What are you talking about?
I calmly revealed the truth I had uncovered. Zach had been cheating on me with Veronica for a long time, hiding it from me. His whole scheme, to fake his death, was to cash in on his life insurance. He had stolen my insurance card, and Veronica had been posing as me to file the claim.
That's nonsense. You have no proof. You're just trying to frame me, aren't you? I get it. You want the lottery money. Greedy woman. I'm not giving it to a stranger like you.
With fury twisting his face, Zach spewed insults at me. But I spread out the evidence of his infidelity. Photos, courtesy of my brother-in-law, across the table. Both Zach and Veronica went pale as they stared at the images.
What the hell is this? When?
I even have audio recordings. I could play them for you right now. Max had stumbled upon Zach and Veronica entering a hotel together by chance. He snapped pictures and recorded Zach's voice, boasting, "Soon, we'll have a huge sum of money." When he later heard Zach had died, he grew suspicious and came to me with his findings. Max hadn't been sure whether Zach was truly alive, and he didn't want to upset me without proof. But then we saw Zach and Veronica near the grave.
I'll kill you.
In a fit of rage, Zach charged at me, his face contorted into a monstrous expression. Terrified, I dashed toward the door. As I reached it, there was a loud knock from the other side. When I unlocked the door, my father-in-law and Max burst in. They had been waiting outside and had heard everything through a speakerphone connection with Max's phone. Furious, they grabbed Zach and beat him down.
Ow! Stop! Anna, help me.
You threw away me and Ashley for your mistress. Oh, and that lottery? It was just a dream your father had.
What? You tricked me.
You're one to talk. I simply gave you a taste of your own medicine. Zach glared at me with pure hatred, but he was pinned down by his father and Max. Meanwhile, Veronica stood frozen in shock. Insurance fraud is a serious crime. The two of you can rot in jail and think about what you've done.
No. Please. Don't call the police. It was all Veronica's idea.
What? You're going to betray me now? You're the one who said Anna was boring and convinced me.
No, I didn't.
Anna, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. We've been friends for so long. Forget Zach. Just save me.
Even as they turned on each other, begging for mercy, I was completely disappointed. I never had a kind husband or a loyal friend. I never want to see your faces again. They finally realized there was no escape. Defeated, they broke down in tears. In the end, both of them were arrested for insurance fraud and found guilty. I divorced Zach and demanded 2 million yen in alimony and 15 million yen in child support. Since Zach had no savings, the house was transferred into my name for repayment. I also demanded 1.5 million yen from Veronica, which she paid in full from her savings. Zach was disowned by his family, and his crime cost him his job. I heard he and Veronica now live in a rundown apartment, constantly fighting, but that's no longer my concern. As for Max, it turns out he's a shy and serious man. Back in middle school, he had feelings for me while I was on the badminton team but never confessed. When Zach announced he was marrying me, Max was shocked and couldn't bring himself to face me, which I mistakenly interpreted as dislike. He adored Ashley and wanted to protect me when trouble came my way. Although I've just gotten divorced, and I'm not ready to respond to Max's feelings yet, I appreciate his kindness. His parents, too, have been incredibly supportive of me and Ashley. For my daughter's sake, I'll keep living my life with a smile. How did you like today's story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.
Today is our golden wedding anniversary, celebrating 50 years of marriage between my husband and me. As we began to enjoy the dishes, our granddaughter Amy appeared distressed, on the verge of tears. What's wrong with her? Concerned, I was about to ask her what was wrong when she tugged at Nancy's sleeve, her voice trembling as she spoke.
Mommy, I need to go pee.
Nancy, with a cold expression, retorted sharply at Amy.
What's the matter? Such a hassle. Just use a diaper.
I couldn't fathom Nancy's words. How could she suggest Amy continue wearing a diaper when she clearly needed to use the bathroom? It was unfathomable that Nancy's thought process could be so dismissive. A soaked diaper would be uncomfortable and unpleasant for Amy. Unable to bear it, I was about to reproach Nancy. Before I could speak, a clear voice rang out.
Hey, Nancy. Using Amy for Instagrammable isn't cool.
The unexpected voice silenced the room. It was my grandson, Michael. Nancy, visibly flustered by his words, remained speechless. My daughter Emma, seeming to realize something, pulled out her smartphone.
Michael, is this what they mean by Instagrammable?
On the screen of Emma's smartphone was a popular video sharing website. The Secrets of Parenting a 3-year-old Girl. Beside a cute illustration icon, a self-introduction was written. Amy is a 3-year-old girl. Could the creator of this video account be Nancy? Emma, could you show me that video for a moment? I took the smartphone from Emma and tapped on the video at the top of the account. What was displayed there? My name is Sarah. I turned 67 this year. I've been married to my husband, Jason, for 50 years, always putting family first. We've led a modest life as he's always been there to protect us. While not extravagant, our days have been peaceful and happy. We have 2 children, John and Emma. It is said that children grow up in the blink of an eye, and it's true. Our once demanding little ones have grown into adults, married, and flown the nest. John graduated from college and married Nancy, his college sweetheart, right away. I was surprised by how young they were to marry, but if they're happy, that's all that matters. My daughter Emma found love at her workplace, and after 2 years of living together, she got married. Her partner is her direct superior named Nathan. He came to make the formal announcement of their marriage wearing a perfectly ironed suit, without a single crease, just as I had often heard from Nancy. He gave off the impression of being sincere and serious, and it was a relief for both me and my husband Jason. Both John's family and Emma's family bought homes close to the house where my husband and I live. As a result, they often come to visit us. It's heartwarming to have our grown children come to see us. We've also been blessed with grandchildren. My first grandchild, Michael, is Emma's firstborn son. 2 years after Michael was born, John and Nancy also welcomed a daughter named Amy. The grandchildren are thriving, with Michael now a lively 5-year-old. During a recent visit to our home, he eagerly showed us his shiny new school bag, excited to start elementary school next year. Amy, at the age of 3, has recently developed an interest in fashion. Despite her young age, she's a responsible child with many friends at preschool, and she attends the same childcare center near my home where John and Emma once went, a place filled with fond memories. While I felt a pang of loneliness when the children left our home, knowing they are just a short distance away, and I can see my grandchildren's faces anytime, fills me with happiness. My greatest joy is spending time with my children and grandchildren, who are as dear to me as my own eyes. However, there is one thing that concerns me. Nancy, John's wife, often brings Amy to our house for care. I'm always delighted to see Amy. My 3-year-old granddaughter is like a sponge, soaking up knowledge rapidly, and she impresses me with her growth every time we meet. However, the frequency of her visits is becoming concerning. After leaving Amy with us, Nancy, dressed in flashy outfits, goes out. Since John often works late, my husband Jason and I end up taking care of Amy most of the time. Gradually, Nancy started relying on me for Amy's childcare pickups, sometimes not arriving until late into the night.
Grandma, where's Mommy? Isn't she here yet?
Amy asks me with a sad expression, wondering when Nancy will come to pick her up. At just 3 years old, she must long for her mother's comfort. Each time my adorable granddaughter looks lonely, my heart aches. How could Nancy leave little Amy alone like this? What exactly is Nancy doing after entrusting Amy to me? Amy, don't worry. Mommy will be here soon. I reassure her, embracing her gently every time she looks sad. That's all I can do for now. It was a cloudless Sunday morning. As usual, Nancy arrived with Amy in tow.
Good morning. I'm sorry, but could you please take care of Amy again today?
Nancy, wearing a short skirt and carrying an expensive-looking bag, urged Amy.
Come on, hurry up.
Amy walked over to me and took my hand with her small one. Nancy didn't say a word to Amy, simply told me.
Then, you tonight.
And hurried away. As Nancy's figure grew smaller and eventually disappeared, Amy looked down, appearing lonely. Amy, look. It's such a beautiful day today. How about we go to the park together, Grandma and you? I suggested going to the park to lift Amy's spirits even just a little. Her face lit up instantly.
The park. Let's go.
Seeing my granddaughter's smile made me happy, and I gently stroked her head. The park, with its large elephant-shaped slide that Amy loves, is about a 20-minute walk from our house. As we walked hand in hand towards the park, we were approached by Mrs. Smith, a woman around my age who has been living in the neighborhood for a long time. Mrs. Smith said something to us that was simply unbelievable.
"Oh my! Is this little one Amy? Your granddaughter? You've truly got yourself a wonderful daughter-in-law."
I couldn't understand those words. Nancy didn't seem like a good daughter-in-law to me. How could a mother who leaves Amy alone every day to go out be considered a good daughter-in-law? After a moment of shock, I asked, "Mrs. Smith, what do you mean by that exactly?"
"Nancy. She's probably looking after Amy alone because John comes home late. Right? She seems well educated and well off financially. So Amy's future looks secure. We wouldn't want to burden the child with financial worries. Right?"
Mrs. Smith said with a smile. Something's off. Nancy in my mind and the Nancy Mrs. Smith described don't match up. Trying not to show my agitation, I gave a vague response and headed to the park with Amy. That evening, around 8 o'clock, Nancy arrived. Amy, exhausted from playing in the park with me and sliding down her favorite elephant slide 5 times, had fallen asleep. I gently picked up her small body to avoid waking her and handed her over to Nancy's arms. As I was about to ask Nancy what she was doing leaving Amy with me, she hurriedly said,
"Oh no. Amy might wake up."
And quickly left. Even after Nancy and Amy had left, Mrs. Smith's words continued to haunt me. Nancy is a wealthy and well-educated mom. Nancy I knew constantly left Amy with me to go out, and she didn't seem wealthy despite graduating from the same university as John, which, to be frank, isn't prestigious, it's a small local private college. When I met John recently, he complained about working late every day and barely getting paid. There was no sign of financial comfort. He mentioned his salary was average, and Nancy doesn't work. She's a stay-at-home mom. I couldn't imagine John's family having such a high household income.
"Sarah, you look troubled. What's wrong?"
He must have noticed something off about me. Jason gazed at me with concern in his eyes. We've been married for 50 years, sharing everything and overcoming challenges together. There's no way I could hide anything from my husband. I told Jason what Mrs. Smith had said to me. Nancy leaves Amy with me every day and goes out, and even my husband knew that Amy was feeling lonely. Yet, I felt uneasy about Mrs. Smith's impression of Nancy as a wealthy and well-educated mom. Jason listened intently to my words. After I finished speaking, Jason remained silent for a while, seeming lost in thought.
"So that's what happened."
He took out his smartphone, which he had recently learned to use with Emma's help, and began to make a call. I watched Jason making the phone call for a while. I couldn't quite make out the voice of his conversation partner, nor could I understand what they were discussing. But Jason always guides me in the right direction. Talking to him made my heart feel a little lighter. I closed my eyes, simply wishing for Amy's happiness as she grows up. A week passed, and I sat on the living room sofa, knitting, when the phone rang with a jarring tone. I hurriedly picked up the receiver.
"Hello, Mom? Dad and Mom, it's your 50th wedding anniversary this year, right? Emma and I were talking, and we want to throw you a party, but do you have any free days?"
On the other end of the line was our son, John. He suggested gathering our family and Emma's to celebrate our golden wedding anniversary. Oh, how lovely. Thank you. Jason's days off are Saturdays and Sundays, so either of those days works for us. I informed John of Jason's work schedule. I felt joy and excitement at the thought of our children and grandchildren celebrating our golden wedding anniversary, and I couldn't help but feel elated. On a Saturday night a week later, 3 families gathered after a long time at a luxurious and renowned upscale restaurant in Tokyo known for its high hospitality standards. John had made the reservation. Nancy exclaimed,
"Wow! This is amazing. It's so luxurious.
Excitedly, Nancy started taking pictures as soon as they entered the restaurant.
Amy, stand over there. A little more to the right. Yes, perfect.
She directed Amy, snapping several photos next to an elegant folding screen. Taking photos in a high-end restaurant isn't considered appropriate behavior as it can disrupt the ambiance and disturb others with the sound of the shutter. It's proper etiquette to seek permission from the restaurant staff before taking any pictures. Although I was concerned, I silently watched Nancy's actions, reluctant to spoil the celebratory atmosphere of the occasion.
Thank you for waiting.
A staff member, dressed in a beautiful dress, brought the dishes. Delicately arranged, the dishes resembled works of art on the table.
Well then, now that the dishes are served, once again.
John began.
Mom, Dad, congratulations on your 50th wedding anniversary. Here's to many more.
Before John could finish speaking, Nancy interjected loudly.
Wait a minute.
No one has touched the food yet, so I have to take pictures. Nancy explained.
So just hold on a sec.
I was taken aback. Jason sitting next to me seemed equally exasperated. Emma, who was sitting across from her, couldn't contain herself any longer and spoke up.
Nancy, hold on. This is a celebration for our parents. It's not the place to take pictures. It's just not proper.
Nancy, visibly annoyed by Emma's comment, reluctantly put down her phone and turned away with a sulky expression. John looked uncomfortable, bowing his head.
Mom, Dad, once again, from me, congratulations on your 50th wedding anniversary.
Emma said. Emma. John. Thank you. Nancy's sulky attitude bothered me, but Emma's words were heartwarming. As everyone started eating, Amy seemed restless. She had a look on her face like she was about to cry, appearing unsettled. I wondered what was wrong with Amy. Just as I was about to ask her, she tugged on Nancy's sleeve and pleaded in a voice that sounded like she was about to cry.
Mommy, I need to go pee.
Nancy, approached by Amy's plea, put on an icy expression and snapped at Amy.
What now? You're so annoying. Just use a diaper.
I couldn't understand Nancy's words. I couldn't believe Nancy would say to just leave Amy in her wet diaper when she's complaining she needs to pee. Wet diapers get heavy and uncomfortable, and Amy would be uncomfortable too. I couldn't stand it and was about to confront Nancy when a clear voice spoke up before me.
Hey, Nancy. Amy is a person, not a toy.
The unexpected voice caused silence to fall over the room. It was Emma's son, Michael. With a stern expression, Michael continued.
You can't use Amy for Instagrammable moments.
Nancy, upon hearing Michael's words, appeared visibly flustered and couldn't say anything in response. Nancy's treatment of Amy is appalling. It's far from acceptable for a mother. As Emma seemed to notice something, she pulled out her smartphone.
Michael, when you say Instagrammable, are you referring to this?
On the screen of Emma's smartphone was a popular video site. Secrets of how to deal with a 3-year-old girl and kids. Next to a cute illustration icon, there was a self-introduction written. Amy is a 3-year-old girl. Could the poster of this video account possibly be Nancy?
Yeah. This is Nancy's. Right? When we went to Emily's house the other day, Emily's mom showed it to us.
I recalled hearing about Emily's mom from Emma before. Emma and Emily's mom are the same age, and because Michael and Emily get along well, they are close. Emma, can I see that video for a moment? Taking the smartphone from Emma, I tapped on the top video on the account. The title was How to Get a 3-Year-Old Who Hates the Toilet to Go. Another busy day for a solo parenting mom. Despite constantly leaving Amy with me, I couldn't help but wonder what being a solo parenting mom meant as I watched the video. In the video, Amy crying and Nancy scolding her harshly were shown. Having interacted with Amy daily and knowing her well, I was certain. Though her face wasn't clearly visible, it was indeed Amy. I recognized her mother's flashy clothes, the same outfit Nancy wore when she came to pick up Amy the other day. Nancy's manner of speaking in the video was too extreme.
Just do as you're told. Go to the toilet.
Grabbing Amy's sobbing arm and raising her voice, Nancy seemed to be gripping her forcefully. Amy's thin arms in the video appeared congested. A cold sweat ran down my back. This was far too cruel. With trembling hands, I tapped on a video titled, "Dealing with a 3-year-old in their terrible twos, How to Fix Picky Eating Habits." The video began playing, showing Nancy forcefully pushing carrots into Amy's mouth as she complained they were too hard to eat. Another video titled, "Sometimes Mom Needs a Break, How to Put Your Child to Bed Alone," depicted Nancy locking a tearful Amy in her bedroom and indulging in a solitary drink. As I watched the content of the videos, it became clear to me that this was not discipline but something far more disturbing, and I felt the blood drain from my face. Nancy, what on earth is this? Suppressing my rising anger, I turned to Nancy and quietly asked,
This isn't me. It's someone else entirely.
Nancy protested rapidly, her eyes darting back and forth. It was clear that something was very wrong.
That's Nancy's videos. The person in the videos is her.
Jason stated firmly.
I asked Sarah about it the other day. Mrs. Smith from the neighborhood mentioned Nancy as a wealthy, education-focused mom who watches Amy alone while John is away. When I heard that, I became very skeptical. So, I decided to investigate.
In the silence that followed, Jason's voice echoed. Nancy's eyes widened as she froze. Her body trembled slightly.
I called Mrs. Smith and asked about Nancy. Apparently, Nancy herself asked Mrs. Smith to follow this account because she's the one posting it.
I recalled the conversation with Jason when I consulted him about what Mrs. Smith, our neighbor, had said. At that time, the person Jason was speaking to on the phone was indeed Mrs. Smith. Emma, who had been listening to Jason's words, stood up with a startled expression.
I've heard about that too. Nancy has been asking her mommy friends at the nursery to follow her video account. She wants support because she wants to become a famous video creator, right?
Remembering Michael's words, which he said he learned from Emily's mom, I held my breath. Michael, Emily, and Amy all attend the same nursery. It's only natural that Emily's mom would hear about Nancy's video account talk. With Emma's follow-up, Nancy's face turned crimson as she shouted.
That's not true. I didn't ask for anything like that. I just said I'd tell them if they wanted to follow.
She said she'd tell them if they wanted to follow. Nancy's words echoed in my mind. I was convinced. So, that video account must indeed belong to Nancy. Nancy, earlier you said it wasn't yours, but this is yours, isn't it? I pointed to Nancy scolding Amy on the screen. Nancy finally seemed to realize the grave mistake she had made, and her face quickly paled. Seeing her reaction, Michael muttered.
Telling her to go to the bathroom. Insisting on diapers today. If decisions are made based on Nancy's mood, Amy will have a hard time.
Feeling hit at the core by Michael's words, Nancy slumped in defeat. Seeing this, John hurriedly stood up from his chair and knelt on the floor. His eyes firmly met ours.
I didn't realize anything until Michael pointed it out. I've been working overtime just to increase income, not paying attention to what's happening at home.
John confessed, tears welling up in his eyes and his voice trembling.
Not knowing that Nancy was always leaving Amy with Mom, causing trouble for both Dad and Mom and ruining festive occasions. I'm truly sorry for Amy.
John bowed deeply, tears falling onto his knees. John promised us that he would talk with Nancy alone when he got back. I watched silently until John, with Nancy and Amy, disappeared from view, wishing for John and Amy's future happiness. A few days later, as I was preparing dinner in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I found John standing there.
Mom, sorry for dropping by unexpectedly. Can I come in?
John said with a serious expression. Sensing the gravity in John's demeanor, I thought there must be something important. Of course, this is your home too. Come on in, I said, ushering John into the dining area where Jason was sitting. John took a seat across from us and began to speak.
Mom, Dad, sorry for the sudden visit. Nancy and I have had a discussion since then. I've decided to divorce Nancy. I came today to explain everything clearly.
John's voice was firm, showing his determination.
Nancy has been excessively scolding Amy on a daily basis. I confirmed it with Amy as well. Plus, she had accumulated a significant amount of debt from consumer loans.
John continued. His words triggered a memory in me. On the day when Nancy's video account was discovered, Jason and I checked Nancy's videos together. Her posts mainly consisted of videos labeled as training for Amy and introductions to luxury brand bags and clothing. Mrs. Smith from the neighborhood had mistaken Nancy for being wealthy after watching her videos showcasing luxury bags. She hadn't watched the videos scolding Amy, she had only glanced at the titles, assuming she was providing thorough education, leading to a misunderstanding. The numerous luxury brand items Nancy showcases easily surpass $10,000 each. At that moment, I couldn't help but wonder where she was getting the money to afford such expensive purchases. Could that debt be for buying the brand items Nancy showcased in her videos? John nodded in response to my remark. Nancy had been borrowing money to purchase brand items and showcase them on her video account. The debt kept mounting, and she was resorting to borrowing more money to repay it. Since Nancy had disposed of the reminders arriving at home before John could see them, he remained unaware. By featuring high-end brand items and sharing parenting experiences on video sites, she gained numerous views and attention. Nancy started feeling superior, equating views and attention to being better than others, and becoming obsessed with what's Instagrammable. Nancy refused to confront the mounting debt she was accumulating. It seemed she resorted to drinking and avoiding reality while I entrusted Amy to her care. After finishing his explanation, John bowed his head towards us.
Mom, Dad, from now on, I'll prioritize Amy over everything else in my life. I'm truly sorry for causing trouble.
John. He then left, saying he would discuss the divorce proceedings and gain custody of Amy with Nancy again. A few days later, John called.
Mom, it's settled that Amy will continue living with me.
It seemed John and Nancy had been at odds over Amy's custody and had been negotiating. Today, it was resolved that John would be granted custody. Nancy insisted on having custody of Amy, but Amy expressed her desire to be with John. When pointed out the excessive scolding towards their daughter and Amy's wishes were considered, Nancy couldn't argue back and agreed to let John have custody. Even through the phone, John's voice sounded genuinely happy. After divorcing John, Nancy's reputation quickly deteriorated, and she fled town. A year passed. John sold his house and now lives with Amy and us. Meanwhile, Nancy is said to be living alone in a rundown apartment in a distant city. She's reportedly struggling to pay child support and repay debts, working tirelessly every day. It was a cloudless, sunny Sunday afternoon. Emma and Michael were visiting today. As I sat knitting on the living room sofa, I heard joyful laughter coming from the backyard. I got up and joined Jason on the veranda. Jason, I heard laughter and had to come see what's going on, I said. Amy was happily playing ball with Michael, who had come to visit. Meanwhile, John and Emma watched them with gentle eyes. Jason, I'm so glad. Seeing those kids so happy fills my heart with joy, I said, deeply moved. Jason nodded solemnly and held my hand. I returned the gesture, looking out at the children and grandchildren in the yard. I wished Nancy would appreciate Amy's happiness instead of just focusing on her video account's followers and views. Amy's radiant smile lit up under the sun, sparkling brightly. From now on, I'll protect that smile. That's what I truly believed in my heart.